Carry on.
Yeah, so we are on the page at bottom of 583. We've been telling jokes that you don't know because the tape wasn't running. So you are never going to know what we're talking about.
Not right.
But so this set, so we have the bottom of 583. So Bamiot, this is the mute, minimize. Bamiot Sachara, minimize business. Right? Bamiut derech eretz, minimize. Derech eretz is the way of the world, but generally it means physical activity, sexual activity. Bamiut tainug, right? Minimize pleasure. Bamiut shena, minimize sleep. Bamiut sicha, minimize conversation. Bamiut sachok, and minimize laughter. So we already did the first three. We're going to just do a quick kind of walk-through review of what they are, and then we'll move into the other ones. B'miut sachara. So all of these ones that say miut, to minimize, means that there are things that you can't eliminate in life because they're good. They're actually not, we don't believe that holiness is, can you go hide in a cave someplace? Right? There's other philosophical systems that their concept of holiness is separation from the world. Right? Go to a mountain in Nepal and hide in a cave, or go to a monastery and physically separate yourself from the world. So that's not our idea of holiness. That God created us to be participants in the world. And He created vessels and pathways to have pleasure in the world. And He wants you to be a participant. He wants you to live life and love life. But it's also possible, these are all things as you go through it, that are necessary critical components to having a life of pleasure. But they're also things that you could get so caught up in that you're lost, right? We mentioned a couple of weeks ago that if I ask you for the yeshivish, the Jewish word for a heretic, right, for an opponent, an opponent of God, right? The word's an apokoros, right? Apokoros, and we think of on the first pass, we think of an apokoros as an intellectual enemy of God. But where does the word apokoros come from? Right? It comes from a Greek philosophical system, the Epicureans. Right? It's not a word picked out of the air. But if I ask you what's an Epicurean, right? An Epicurean is a person who's totally into physical pleasure. It's a person who's into good tasting food and fancy banquets and dishes and girls and dancing and luxury. Right? When we talk about Epicurean tastes, they're luxurious tastes. That in the end, the thing that drives you away from holiness is of pure, raw physical indulgence in physical pleasures. Right? The guys who leave, I remember when I first was becoming religious and talking to one of my teachers about, I was into philosophy and, I had a good college education and a good, rounded kind of liberal arts, philosophical education. I said, I'm not afraid of Torah, of, non-Jewish ideas. But I'm not afraid, that my kids are going to going to college. I'm not afraid of non-Jewish ideas because our ideas are so crisp and clear. And he says, the thing that lures people away isn't the ideas. The thing that lures them away is pretty girls, right? Is wanting to go to frat parties. It's wanting to go to a football game on Sunday, on a Shabbos afternoon, and go to a tailgate party and eat bratwurst and drink beer and shove your buddies around and make bad jokes and belch and, right? It's very few people leave because they sit down and have a deep philosophical opposition to the ideas. It's just, I want to play. I want to party. I want to be an Epicurean, right? Being an Epicurean is at the heart of an Epicourse. So these are 6 things that we're going to go through that are all things that are critical to have, that your life would be much worse off without. And in fact, even in this pathway of holiness, your life would be worse off without these things. But they're things that you can indulge in to the extent that they'll take you away from everything. So that's why it's got to be b'miut, right? That it's minimization. You have to figure out how much of this do you need, right? What's really appropriate for you, and that you should have a downward pressure on it, trying to right? Don't eliminate it, but the least that I need to be successful in my life, because otherwise it's gonna eat me alive. So the first one is sachar, is business. So business is really, it's pragmatism, right? It's practicality. Business is I'm involved in, I don't want to be a sponge. I don't want my life given to me. I want to earn it, right? Business is the whole practice of being out in the world. And, in business, you got to be practical. You got to earn a living. You got to come up with, with an idea, how to run a program and manage a problem. And how it's, right? It's this world, function and focus, it's quality control, it's having priorities, it's what's profitable, it's what's real, and you can't just have an imaginary idea and say, I'm going to sell this, Right? No one wants it, you're not going to sell it. Right? You have assets you think of as valuable. If there's no market for it, there's no value to them. Right? If you say, I'm going to tax and spend, it's pragmatism. Schara is the self-discipline of being involved in the world in such a way that you have to make it work. Right? It's exciting. It's exciting to build a project. It's exciting to earn a living. You see guys whose whole lives, it's like, if you don't have any practical involvement, you've never run a business or been in a business, you've never had to figure out how to pay your bills, right? And if we give you unlimited credit cards, then you run you run like the country runs, right? Spend, I need it, so I'll buy it, right? In your real life, the fact that you need it doesn't mean you're going to get it. No matter how bad you need it. You look at your wife and say, we don't have the money to buy it. You're not going to, it doesn't matter how bad you need it. If you don't have it, you don't have it. Right? And you have to adjust what you need and what you want. There's a level of pragmatism, of understanding that life is limited, that resources are allocated, whether it's time or money or attention. Right? Economics is all about the allocation of scarce resources. That's what business is about. And it's important to your life to understand that you have to do that in a practical way. Allocate the time you spend with your kids, with learning, with everything you do takes away from something else. Right? What's my life about? On the other hand, though, it's so exciting. You see people who will spend their whole lives in business. Right? They're 60, 70, 80, 100-hour a week. They're so focused on the deal that they forget to actually have a life. Right? That they never see their kids, and they never see their wives, and they never learn, and they never grow. And it's all about keeping score of I gotta buy. I gotta make the deal. I gotta win. So it's Bamiot. You have to have some practicality. You can't be an Ivy Tower intellectual, but you also have to be careful not to allow that drive to be the business success, to define your life as a business success, to have that suck you up and engulf you. So it's a Bamiot. The second is derech eretz, is sexuality. So the Western consciousness, the American consciousness of sex, is that sex is for recreation. Right? The Catholic, model is that sex is for procreation. Neither of those fits the Jewish Torah idea. That sexuality is about connection. Right? That it's about a soul-to-soul connection. Right? It is your most powerful physical drive because it is your most powerful spiritual drive. Right? The proper purpose of sexuality is your soul and another soul binding themselves together. Right, that ultimately that's the purpose. Is you're taking your soul and tying it to another soul, but through a totally physical pathway. Right? It's never supposed to be about something. The focus of that encounter, right, is an encounter that it's not supposed to be used for something else. It's not. I'm not thinking about tomorrow. I'm not. It's pure. Let's face it. If you look in the Torah, when it talks about a man and his wife, the word is to know. Right? Even in English, the word is intimacy. Right? When it talks about Yehuda coming to Tamar, it says he came to her. Right? But when it talks about, Avraham and Sarah, it says he knew her. Right? That a flame it's a flame. But a connection between a husband and a wife properly used, it's a knowledge. It's a I am trying to bury my soul in your soul. I'm trying to fuse my soul to your soul. That it's a tool for connection. We're not going to go into it in depth, but that's the underlying. Now, the fact that kids come, right, that children come from sexuality, is a hint at how Hashem looks at children. Right, that children arise from an act of connectedness. Right? I mean, they can come from other things, but this fact that where you're doing something that's designed to connect two souls, to the extent that husband and wife are connected, that's where children come from. Right? You even see in the rest of your life, to the extent that you and your wife are connected spiritually, that's going to affect how your children grow, how they what they become. Right? The health of children is influenced by the connectedness of parents. That's why you can ask the question. That's why premarital sex, extramarital sex, why it's not recommended. You have to ask the question: how is it that sleeping with your secretary is going to draw your soul closer to your wife's soul? Right? You're stripping away that connective component, right? And you're either destroying its ability to make that connection for you, or worse, you're connecting yourself. You take some poor girl and she's connecting herself in a place that's not appropriate for her to be connected, right? She's damaging her ability to eventually connect where she needs to, and she's creating leaving parts of her soul behind, taking parts of, that's the destruction, is the purity of it. is that it's this ability to bind two souls. So the positive is you have to have some. Right? A person who can never connect his... it's a sadder life if you've never had that opportunity to really become other-centered and invest your life in the life of another person. Right? To live for and die for. It's a cheaper... you're missing something in your life. On the other hand, your body and your soul so yearn for this connectedness that you can spend your whole life wrapped up in it, right? I mean, if you're not, you're never going to get it, right? But you can spend your whole life pursuing it. You know, everything in our civilization is wrapped up in, the pursuit of sex. Everything is sold with sex. Everything is marketed with sex. Everything is dressed in sex, because that's that Yetzer. Your soul is driven through your body to find, you're sitting here, half of a soul split in half, and you've got this aching to connect. And they market it, they sell it. So it's Bamiot. Right, you have to have some. A life with no physicality, with this physical pathway of connectedness is a sad life. But doesn't have to have it every week, But that concept, But if a person spends his whole life and that's what he's pursuing, it's a wasted life, right? It's a wasted life. And the third one is Bamiut Tayunug. Minimize pleasure. So we talked about, right, there's lots of different words for pleasure or joy, but two, just to give you the sense, is there's the word simcha and the word oneg, tainug, right? So simcha is joy that you take in potential, and oneg is joy you take in actualization. Right? That's why Shabbos is called, you talk about oneg Shabbos. You don't talk about Shabbos as a simcha, because Shabbos is never supposed to be about planning for something else. Shabbos is God is everything I've built this week, today I'm going to enjoy. Shabbos is about connecting to God, having a little bit of herring or whitefish, a good whiskey, hanging out with your friends, good conversation, right? Time with your family, tefillah. It's about taking pleasure in what life is. It's not supposed to be I'm resting up for Tuesday. On the other hand, a simcha, right? Simcha is joy in potential, right? A bris is a simcha. Right, a wedding is a simcha, bar mitzvah is a simcha. That those are all things that the pleasure isn't the event itself. Right? There's no great pleasure in listening to a 13-year-old kid laying for the first time, except for the fact that you're pleased with he's starting a Torah life. Right? When a little boy has a little bit of minor surgery, no one goes to the toenail surgery. The kid has a hernia, no one goes and celebrates the hernia surgery. Why are they celebrating the bris? Because the bris is this whole philosophical thing wrapped around him starting a Torah life, right? That's the joy. The joy is in the potential. The same thing with a wedding. Right? The Jewish wedding is not about the bar. It's not about picking up on some girl while you're there. It's not about, right? It's about these two people are starting a life together, right? It's not, the smorgasbord and the food. It's the pleasure is the chassan and the kala starting a life together. So that's simcha. Oneg is pleasure you take in the moment. It's in some ways it's entertainment. It's the joy I'm having of what I'm doing right now. So you have to have that, right? That it's so easy to get caught up in either potential or cost or pain or difficulty. I'm always striving to get someplace else. Have you ever you grab a candy and you put it in your mouth, and then for whatever reason, you want to move on to something else, so you're hurrying to finish it, right? Have you ever done that? You eat a piece of chocolate, but now you want to go get a drink, so you're hurrying to finish the piece of chocolate. It's like, well, why'd you put it in your mouth in the first place if you're not going to enjoy it? Now you're just trying to get rid of it, right? People spend their whole lives trying to get to the next thing, trying to get to tomorrow, trying to get till this weekend. I can't wait till I get to Hanukkah or Pesach or Purim or summer or graduation or my job or... I can't wait till I'm married, or I can't wait till I have kids, or I can't... And their whole life is focused on what's gonna come. Or even worse, it's focused on the difficulty of what's here now. And they never take pleasure in their lives. And you never stop and realize part of what today is about is working to get ready for tomorrow. But at least some part of today has got to be about just enjoying today. Right? Enjoy the fact that the air is fresh and the clouds are beautiful, the air is cool or whatever. But you have to find time to actually enjoy your life. So it's amazing how many people, if you actually talk to them, And think about today. How much of your day today was really any point in your day today where you actually stopped and put any level of attention into taking pleasure in your day, in enjoying what was going on, right? Or was it all about, I got to get this done, or I got to get this chore over, I got to get through this, I got to get past this, or I just got to get right? The people forget to take pleasure. So oneg, tainug is critical. You have to have some. On the other hand, we live in a society, our whole society is based on tainug. Right? You know, my kids will go on a play date. They'll spend 6 hours with their best friends going crazy, right? And then they'll come home, and they'll be home for 3.5 minutes, and they'll say, I'm bored. I'm not being entertained at this exact second, right? I mean, whether it's TV or radio and video games and books and movies, I mean, we live in an entertainment culture. You know, sports and actors, and everything's about leisure. Everything in our society, it's all about playtime and enjoyment. And am I having a good time right now? And you can lose everything. You can spend your whole life lost in, am I playing? And forget that, you know, life's about working and building and growing and earning, and right? So these three things you see so far, it's like each one of them, it's like if you didn't have it, if you didn't have the practical involvement of earning, right? Schara is the word we use for business is schar. Remember we talked about before the difference between pras and schar. Right? Pras is a bonus. I got something I didn't earn. Schar is I got exactly what I earned. Right? Our word for business is schar, is earning. The pleasure of earning, it's an interesting idea. Our concept of the pleasure of business isn't that I got a lot. It's not getting rich. It's earning. It's whether you're, you know, an auto mechanic or a star baseball player or whatever, you know, whether you're making $100,000 a year or $10,000 a year or $1 million a year. The pleasure is earning. Is I went out and I worked hard and I did something good and it was recognized and I earned. I made that. That's mine. Right? Schara. It's not the compensation. He doesn't say pros. It's not about it. There's a benefit to that. You have to have some. You have to feel you've earned good in your life. Right? But it can't be that your whole life is focused on work. Right? You need intimacy. But your whole life can't be focused on it. And you need pleasure, entertainment. Right? You got to take pleasure in the moment, but your whole life can't be focused on how do I make sure that my nerve endings are tingling right now. So those are the first three.